Welcome to Your Career Podcast. If you're looking for inspiration in your career or job search, you're at the right place. I'm Jane Jackson, your career management coach and author of Navigating Career Crossroads. For more career advice and support, go to janejacksoncoach.com and find all you need to create the career of your dreams. Welcome to episode 270 of Your Career Podcast. In this podcast, I'm excited to interview Kyle Elliott, Dr. Kyle Elliott, whom I interviewed back in episode 181, and that was in 2019. Now, 5-6 years have gone by, and Dr. Kyle Elliott is a trauma-informed career coach and trusted confidant to Silicon Valley's top talent. As a result of working with him, senior managers and executives have landed jobs at Meta, Amazon, Google, and nearly every other tech giant you can imagine. He is a trusted job search and career expert, and Dr. Elliott has been featured in CNBC, CNN, Fast Company, Fortune, Harvard Business Review, and the New York Times. And so, hello, Kyle. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here again.
As we were saying just before I started recording, it's been 6 years, would you believe, since our last podcast interview when you shared your fascinating career journey and the meaning of life as well. And that was back in episode 181 in August 2019. And so from August 2019, 2020, 2021, oh my goodness, what a lot of things happened to the world then. And now in 2025, kicking off this year, let's have a chat about what you've been doing, first of all, and then let's talk about the employment situation in the US. I can share some Australian anecdotes as well, and then really focus on what you highlight in your career coaching now, which is the trauma-informed coaching. So, first of all, how have you been, Kyle?
Good. As you and I were talking about previously, busy. It's been a busy time for job seekers, people looking not just for new jobs, but meaning as well, saying, I don't want just a new opportunity, but I want to find meaning in that next role that I'm looking for. The US job market has been tough since COVID happened. It's been difficult for people to look for roles. 2024 had less layoffs than 2022 and 2023 in the tech market, but it's been really tough for people. So I hope today we're able to provide people a little hope as they look for what's next for them.
Yeah, and especially in the tech market with, honestly, the past year, 2 years, AI has been around for so long, but then the
Mhm.
past 2 years, it's just exponentially grown and has
Yes.
affected so many people's jobs as well.
Mhm.
So it's been very concerning. I mean, AI is something not to be feared, but embraced, but it has caused a lot of redundancies.
Yes.
And in America, like you say, in America, it takes on average about 5 to 6 months to land your new role. In
Mhm.
Australia, it's about 3 to 4 months. So I guess it
Mhm.
might be a little bit easier for Aussies over here.
Mhm.
But in America, I've been following the news, and there have been so many layoffs, redundancies. And so, what would you say is the sentiment at the moment across America when it comes to recruitment?
People are worried on the job seeker side. People are worried it's taking longer to find a job than previously. People are finding it a lot more difficult to find that next job. Companies also have a lot of choice with all these layoffs. They have more talent to choose from. So what's happening, I'm in a lot of recruiter and HR groups. What's happening is they're speaking with more candidates. So
Mm.
it's taking longer for them to interview people and for them to make a decision. So as a job seeker, those people are getting really worried and saying, oh gosh, it used to maybe take a week or two after an interview to hear back. Now it's taking a month or two. So that's adding a lot of people are just more and more nervous throughout the process.
Yeah. And hearing back, so often people complain that they're being ghosted and
Hmm.
they don't hear back at all. And you know, what's so interesting is with this advent of AI, and AI is playing such a huge part in the job application process, the selection process, and also in the interviewing process as well. It's supposed to speed up the process and make things easier for everybody. But what I found from what everybody is giving, feedback and clients that I'm working with is that they're actually getting more frustrated with the process because recruiters can spot if it's an AI resume,
Mhm.
and people are using it very much as a crutch rather than a productivity enhancement tool.
Mhm.
So, what's your opinion on the new recruitment methods these days?
Yeah, what's happening is a lot of people are sending out thousands of resumes. Sometimes you can pay a service to do it, or people are using some sort of application, and recruiters are inundated. Although there's AI and automation that these recruiters can use to update candidates, when you have that many candidates, it's really tricky to update all of them and give them updates, even if you have this tool to do it. So it's difficult for recruiters to be able to stay up to date with all these people. It's really challenging. So as a job seeker, it's not about just saying, how can I go out and apply to as many roles, but instead, how can I be strategic? It's
Yeah.
really a big challenge. And I think there's going to be this leveling that happens, but AI has skyrocketed, as you said, so quickly that it just hasn't leveled out yet. Everyone's trying to just catch up to, they're like, oh, there's this tool. How do I catch up with it?
Yeah, and I think some people got so excited thinking, oh, good, I don't need to spend so long writing my cover letter. AI can do it for me. I'll
Mhm.
hop on to ChatGPT or
Mhm.
else with the resume, get them to do it. And even on LinkedIn, they're encouraging the use of AI because in
Mhm.
some cases it's helpful. But the problem is that I feel, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, Kyle, as well, is that it's depersonalized the process.
Mhm.
And I believe that this highlights even more strongly the importance of networking and that genuine human to human contact rather than just submitting a soft copy of your resume or cover letter. So have you been encouraging your clients who are looking for a job to focus on the human contact?
Yes, it's that human contact is so
Mm,
key. And as you said, depersonalization. People are looking to hire another human, not a resume,
mm,
not some data points that you threw out there. So it can be used helpfully. I have a lot of clients in tech. That's about three-quarters of my clients. And if you use it in the right way, it can be smart. A lot of my clients will say, here's 3 bullet points. Which one's the most powerful? Or can you look at my resume? What tips do you have? So it can be used really powerfully. But when you just say rewrite my whole resume, you're going to sound like every other resume out there. You
mm,
really want to use it. I think of it like a spell check. Spell check's a great tool that uses AI. So using it in little pieces and strategically can be powerful. However, if you're using it like everyone else, you're going to end up in the middle of the bell curve and be just like everyone else. And that's not going to have you be in the top 1% that
mm.
gets the interview.
Yeah, it's so important to highlight your really unique selling proposition, or what is it that makes you stand out, or as you like to say, your fabulousness.
Yes.
Such a good word. I love fabulous is a wonderful word, and fabulousness is even better. Um, and I think too many people don't understand the value that they bring to a role itself because they're usually most people are very humble and they don't like to
Mhm.
brag about themselves. But when they need to stand out, they need to be able to highlight these are the results I've achieved. This is why you need to talk
Mhm.
to me because I can provide a solution. Now, there's something that you do that you focus on, which is really interesting to me because it's a trauma-informed career coaching methodology.
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously, I help my clients to gain confidence and clarity. However, you have a very specific focus. So
Mhm.
tell us about trauma-informed career coaching, Kyle.
Yes, so nearly every human has experienced trauma, and it's going to play a part in your career. If you're looking for a job, if you're interviewing, if you're in your role and you have an encounter with a colleague or a boss that's difficult, the trauma that you've had is going to impact you. And what happens is a lot of times when we're going through our job searches, there might be a negative experience we have, but we're not really sure what's coming up. So in trauma-informed coaching, what happens is we say, ooh, let me be mindful of the trauma I have. And I'm not a therapist. I always like to clarify that. So I'm not going to sit there and process your trauma with you. But we can say, hey, here's some trauma that I have. Let me be mindful of that. Let me regulate my emotions and say, okay, if this trauma is coming up when I'm interviewing, how can I regulate myself so I can be present? So, really, it's about regulating that trauma and then being able to set it aside as much as you can when you're writing your resume, when you're interviewing, when you're networking. I'm often so surprised when we're working on something as simple or seemingly simple as writing a resume when people say, oh, this is actually difficult. I keep hearing my mother's voice in my head. Or I'm trying to interview and I'm remembering my boss who always would critique how much I said. And then I'm like, ooh, let's be mindful of this. I'm not going to process your childhood with you right now. Let's add that to the agenda for your therapist. But let's regulate those feelings and emotions that are coming up and then create some techniques or strategies that would be helpful in the moment for you.
Well, it's so important because the whole job search process, it causes a lot of grief for people, especially
Mhm.
if they've gone through a redundancy. And it really, I mean, it's a major loss, I mean, death in the family, a divorce, job loss, financial difficulties, all of that causes stress. But job loss is huge, especially when you see a lot of other people also going. And if, especially in the tech area where you specialize, if you see a lot of your colleagues leaving and you think they're pretty good at what they do what
Mhm.
I do, then that causes even more stress because you're going to be competing against people that you know, like, and trust, and maybe love as well, because you've worked together for so long and you're going for the same roles. But that little self-limiting belief from what people have heard from others, maybe it was a negative performance review. And if that little nagging voice is in the back of your head, gosh, you really need to knock it on the head so that you can project that confidence. So what
Mhm.
you do really is to help people acknowledge that there have been some issues, and then how do we overcome that so that you can
Mhm.
present your best self in the interview and in the application process? You
Exactly.
mentioned, yeah, you mentioned when people are saying, "Oh, it's so hard to write a resume." It's true. If it's been a while since they've updated their resume or even needed a resume, to put everything down, it's like, "Oh, this is me. What am I worth?" That's the
Yeah.
scary thing. Do you think some of this trauma informed, the anxiety is because it's to do with self-worth?
Oh, yeah, I think so much of it has to do with self-worth, these stories we tell ourselves,
Mm,
our cultural backgrounds or upbringings where people said, oh, I'm going to let my accomplishments speak for themselves. When they don't, the
mm,
accomplishments can't speak for themselves.
mm,
Maybe you grew up in a household where they said, okay, we want to be humble, or we don't brag about ourselves or tell about ourselves. So a lot of people aren't used to talking about themselves, so it's uncomfortable. So
mm.
for anyone, it can be difficult. And then if you have that trauma on top of it, where there were negative repercussions or consequences if you did this. That just adds an additional layer as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, yeah, the cultural upbringing. It's interesting. I always think, it's part of your hidden image, isn't it, Kyle?
Mm,
Where depending on when you were born, whether you were firstborn, secondborn, or thirdborn, whether you were born male or female, whether you were happy about that or not, how you were accepted, whether you were the favorite child or not, whether you were bullied at school or not, that all places that filter over the way we view our world
mhm,
as well. And when something like a job loss happens, all those feelings all bubble up again, and you feel like a kid again, don't you?
mhm.
Yeah. So, what are your strategies, and what strategies would you recommend to anyone who's going through this to help to rebuild their confidence?
I think what's most important, or one of the most important things, is not going at it alone. What's really helpful when navigating this is having a community. You and I are coaches, so something I'm a big fan of is coaching. I have my own coaches.
Mm,
I think part of it is dealing with the mental health. One of the most key things people often say, don't you just have a magic wand, Kyle? And
mm,
if I had a magic wand, it would be hope. Finding some of that hope, whether it is through a community of people around you, it's mentors, it's other people that would be helpful in lifting you up. And part of that might be with that community saying, here's people who aren't helpful.
mm,
A lot of my clients have a partner or parents who are checking in and saying, how's that job search going? Sometimes
Mhm.
you might have to declutter that community and say, hey, dad, every time you check in on my job search, it's not helpful. That was a homework assignment recently for a client to say, hey, you know what? Let's talk to your dad. And you're going to talk to your dad and say, you know what? That's not helpful when you check in. I'm going to come to you when I want to give you updates on my job search. So I would say community and focusing on your mental health are two of the biggest things when you're navigating the job search. Yes, there's tactical pieces, and that's what a lot of other job seekers are doing. So you can get a leg up when you focus on these other aspects that are going to go deeper beyond just the surface level, applying to jobs, updating your resume, optimizing your LinkedIn.
Yeah, because the job search process, it's not really rocket science. It's a process that you need to go through. But I think having support, the personal
Mhm,
support, either professional and or personal support, is so important, isn't it? I like
mhm,
that phrase, declutter your community, because depending on who we hang around with, they can
mhm,
either build us up or they can drag us down. And
mhm,
I remember there was one client that I worked with, and he says, "Oh, I like coming into the office for a face to face because I have to get out of the house because my wife keeps saying to me, have you got a job yet? Have you got a job yet?" And it's, from the exploration and the job application process through to actually landing the job, that's a long process. It doesn't
yeah.
happen overnight. And so I've submitted an application, and the next day someone's saying, have you got the job yet? It causes even more anxiety, doesn't it? So definitely good on your client and for you for advising your client to say, okay, I'll let you know how I'm going rather than I
Mhm.
don't need you to hover and helicopter around me while I do this because it's stressing me out. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So important. And the way that you speak, Kyle, is very relaxing and empowering. And I'm sure that, all your clients just love just having a brief chat with you to check in between coaching sessions too. How important do you think the role of empathy is for career coaches?
Oh gosh, I think it's critical being able to sit in and say, what's this person going through? It's not the same as sympathy. Brene Brown has a bunch
Mm,
of resources on that, but really being able to understand where that person is. I
mm,
think sometimes, I think you're an amazing example of coaching and really doing true coaching, not just saying, here's what to do. I think
mm,
sometimes people are really just professional advice givers, but actually with coaching, empowering that client,
mm,
being able to sit with them in those emotions and feelings and then say, okay, what would be most helpful for you here? And you can't do that if you don't have empathy. You're not able to sit there in the moment with them. And I
mm,
think sometimes that's missing.
mm,
Sometimes when we turn to family and friends, what happens is they're like, here's some advice. Here's what would be helpful 20 years ago when I looked for a job. And when you declutter that, you're able to make space sometimes for people who can give you some more empathetic advice that's really focused solely on what you need instead of a family member or friend who knows you a little more subjectively.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I think empathy is so important because as a coach, when you're working with someone, the eye contact is important. It's really
Mhm,
listening for what isn't being said
mhm,
as well as what is being said. Even noticing if there's a change in whether their pupils are dilated or constricted, can
mhm,
indicate stress. And reading their body language. I think
mhm,
that's where the face-to-face, whether it's via Zoom or Teams or really in person
mhm.
makes such a difference. And just feeling that you're in a safe space, that's what clients really want, don't they? Interesting, you've mentioned what coaching is and what giving advice is. And many people don't realize what a career consultant is versus a career coach. What would
Yeah.
your definition be?
I think a consultant is really saying, here's what you should do, or giving some advice, some strategy. There are times where we might be telling people what to do. I know you do a ton of work on resumes and LinkedIn, and sometimes we might put on that consultant hat and say, here's the best font size, or here's some great fonts, or here's how to write your LinkedIn headline. We could coach someone there and really empower and ask open-ended questions, and it would take a really long time and be a
Mm,
huge investment of energy.
mm,
And we might just consult them. Oftentimes, though, what's more powerful for someone is that coaching, those open-ended questions,
mm,
that empowering, being on that journey with them
mm,
instead of simply consulting. And
mm,
I think a powerful coach also knows how to wear those different hats and say, right now, coaching is going to make sense. right now consulting is going to make sense and getting that client buy-in
Mm.
and support that, okay, is it okay if we move between these items
Yeah.
or really these hats for you?
Yeah, yeah. I always say I'm putting on my coach hat now, putting on my consultant hat now,
Mm,
putting on my counselor hat now
yes.
as well. Because sometimes people just need to have a little bit of a cry and you
Hmm.
just sit there and just be there. And I think there's a lot of power in just being there for our clients as well,
Hmm.
because there are times when they just don't want to be alone and they don't want to do anything. They just want to know that they're okay and
Hmm.
they're enough. Just the way they are,
Yeah.
they're perfectly enough. And then once they feel, okay, I'm good now, I'm in a good
Mhm.
space, then, okay, I got to hit the job search. Let's go through the process. And it really is a process, isn't it? There are things you need to do. You need to get your resume done, you need to get your cover letters done, you need to network and
Yeah.
build your verbal pitch. When you start coaching with someone, what's your process? How do you begin so that people feel very comfortable with you, Kyle?
I think part of it is understanding what's most important to them. With tech people, they love KPIs or key performance indicators. So getting really clear on those KPIs and what's most important to them, how they're going to measure success. Some coaches have a here's our 6 step process. This is what we're doing. I'm not like that. I love a very bespoke process and getting buy-in from the client on what that success and KPIs are going to look like. So I think that's part of it. The other part is really customizing it to each person and figuring out, is this person someone who wants to talk for 40 minutes before I get a word in? And with my own therapists and coaches, I've had to work on really making sure I'm adapting myself to each person and what they need. Yes, challenging the client and saying, okay, what might we not be getting to if you're going on a tangent for 40 minutes? And what do I need to do to adapt myself to this person and be there? And like you said, that safe space, that counselor, whatever might be helpful for them as well.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes a career coach, we do a certain thing for the people who need help, but then there could be times when there's a duty of care, and you might think, and this has happened to me, a number of times where, oh, this need is outside of my area of expertise, but I do have a pool of psychologists or counselors that I can draw upon to refer people to so that they get exactly the
Yes.
type of support that they need at any specific given time. And then when they're ready, then we focus on the job search
Yeah.
itself. What's interesting, and you'd probably find this interesting too, is I'm in Australia. I've done a lot of work with New South Wales Police Legacy, former police officers who have,
Mm,
that physical as well as the emotional trauma because of the nature of their work, which is really, really challenging. And they may take, 5, 10, 15 years off work before they're ready to go back. But
yeah.
people don't realize that all the little things that happen to us as well in our lives, that causes like cumulative stress. One thing comes
Mhm.
on top of another, on top of another. And so even if you haven't been in like a dangerous situation which has been really traumatic, such as a war or some terrorist attack or something like that, it's
Yeah.
the day-to-day experience of being in somewhere where maybe it's a toxic environment
Yeah.
that causes so much trauma, doesn't it? Yeah. So if someone has, because you're an expert in this particular area, Kyle, if someone has experienced ongoing challenges and maybe being belittled or
Mhm.
yelled at or unappreciated for a long time in a work culture that isn't quite right for them,
Mhm.
what would you recommend to try and change it or to get out?
I love what you said about sometimes it's not these super severe things. Sometimes it's ongoing. I think of it like a leaky pipe.
Mm.
In our last condo before we are now, there was a leaky pipe and there was just this teeny little drip we didn't know about, and it
Oh,
destroyed
annoying.
a bunch of the house.
Mhm.
It caused mold. It was a teeny little drip. And once it was uncovered, there was mold everywhere. Part of the kitchen had to be
Oh,
replaced, the bathroom. And that's what can happen with trauma when there's this little teeny trauma it can build up and build up and build up. And in the moment, you're like, oh, it's a teeny little drop. You don't even notice it sometimes. You don't hear it. And then over time, this mold can build and build and build. And that can happen with trauma. So part of it is saying, are there ways to address it early on? If you're noticing that trauma coming up early on, can you address it? You might not be the person who notices it. Does it take someone else? It was actually the person that lived above us who said, I think I smell some mildew or mold coming from somewhere between our two condos. Something's happening. So it might have to be a colleague or a coach or a counselor or your partner who says, hey, you seem off. Or
Mm,
I'm noticing that you're getting called out in meetings. I want you to know that's not okay.
mm,
So that's one step to take. The second is making sure you have some tools to take care of yourself. Yes, people shouldn't belittle you in the workplace. You deserve to be respected, and people are going to do it at times. Hopefully, you can get out, but in the meantime, saying, what are some tools that are going to be helpful to take care of yourself? Is it breathing? Is it meditation? Is it having a therapist you see? Is it Pilates or yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong? But having some tools to take care of yourself that are within your control, because a lot of trauma is really at its core control being taken away from us. So figuring out what's in your control that's going to help you bring that back and take care of yourself and create that safety.
Yes, I think control is a key element, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
we all like to be in control of our own lives. And
Mhm.
the problem with layoffs and redundancies, it happens to us. It's not our choice.
Yep.
Change is not actually that scary. We can choose to make a career change or choose to make a change in our lives. But when someone else decides for us,
Yes.
that really is hard to take, isn't it? It's just, how dare they? Or I've given you the best years of my life, and
Yeah.
then you repay me with this. And there can be a lot of anger, disappointment, frustration, and challenges as well. And I think as career coaches, so many of us, we need to have the personal tools to be able to handle it as well, because very often, as a career coach, you take on a lot of what our clients are feeling because we care so much about them. So, as a coach who's been in the business for a long time, as I have, I've been around for donkey's years now, Carl. But what would you say would be some good lessons for other career coaches who want
Mm.
to do their best for their clients as well?
I would say community as well, having a support system where
Mm,
you can say, hey, here's the struggle I'm going with, or this challenge, or this opportunity, even. What techniques do you recommend? What should I be doing here? How have you dealt with it before?
mm,
I would also recommend having your own coach or coaches. I think that's really key. I always say, don't trust a coach who doesn't have their own coach or coaches. I think that's really important.
mm,
I would also recommend making incremental changes, saying, okay, here's what's working, and then what might I need to do differently? I think a lot of times people kind of get in a groove and then just keep
mm.
doing the same thing over and over. But the job market's changing, careers are changing, the labor market's changing, coaching is changing, the world is changing. So what you need to be changing as well, whether it's new trainings that you're doing, new life experiences, you have to be adapting. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind on your practices.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think? Now we're into 2025. Can you believe it? Gosh, it's amazing. I mean, I keep thinking back to 2000 and I realize, oh my goodness, that was 25 years ago. Remember
Mhm.
Y2K and everyone was so worried. Now
Yes.
suddenly we're in 2025. It's almost crazy. But what would you say are your predictions for this year, 2025, with regard to the job market and perhaps skills that people need to be exploring?
We're going to see a lot of hiring, I imagine. I
Mm,
think after, at least in the US, after the presidential inauguration, we're going to see a lot of hiring, February and forward. And then
mm,
I think we're going to see a lot of skills needed around those softer skills, things that can't be automated, program management, people skills,
mm,
collaboration,
mm,
enablement. Those sorts of things are going to be critical, those soft skills.
mm,
Yes, there's going to be a need for people who can manage AI, prompt engineering, those sorts of things. I think the soft skills are going to be critical. People who have good soft skills,
mm.
communication, collaboration, all of that, that's going to be paramount moving forward in 2025 and future years to come.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You know what I think? I think everyone needs to develop coaching skills,
Oh,
listening
yeah.
skills, deep listening, and also to understand the principles of coaching too, because when you understand what coaching's all about, it makes you a better leader too, and then
Mhm.
you can lead your people effectively. Yeah. Oh,
Yep,
wonderful.
that's a good
You know,
one.
I could talk to you all day, Kyle. It's just there's so much to share. It's fantastic. But you've got some good takeaways, right, for our listeners today. And I took the liberty to download your job search launch guide. So tell us all about your job search launch guide, Kyle.
Yes. So often job seekers reach out to me and they don't know where to focus their time, their energy, their effort. They say, Kyle, there's so much advice out there. I don't know what to do. So I created this launch guide to tell you here's 5 areas to focus on. And it walks you through where to start focusing your energy, your effort, your time. So then you're not just kind of going wild, but instead it walks you through that. You can download it on my website, and it really makes it easier so you can be calm and confident heading into your job search.
Oh, wonderful. And just listening to you, I feel very calm as well. I'm sure that's how your clients must feel. Now, I would recommend that everybody connect with Dr. Kyle Elliott on LinkedIn, and he's very approachable and very nice. And also, I'll have the links to your job search launch guide in my show notes too. So you'll be able to find that at janejacksoncoach.com/podcast. And Kyle, I hope it's not 6 years before we have another conversation.
Yes.
I can't believe how quickly the years go by. But the good thing is that it means we definitely have staying power. We're still doing what we love
Yes.
to do and helping the people that we need. And so anyone in the tech space, Kyle Elliott is the man for you. He really will help. So thank you so much. And do you have any parting thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, I want you to know that there's hope. I love what you said there about the staying power. Know that there's hope. If you got laid off, yes, it's scary. It can feel traumatic. Focus on what's in your control. And part of that is maintaining hope through this process.
Yeah. Hope, that's what we all need. And I'm sure that, and actually, I think there is a bright light on the horizon. I think the
Mhm.
changes that are happening now I'm feeling very positive. Thank you so much, Kyle. It's been such a pleasure having you here. Bye now. Thanks for joining me today. For affordable career help, please check out my Career Success Program. I provide a unique blend of online and live career coaching to help you take control of every aspect of your career or career change. If you aren't where you want to be in your career, let's talk. Check it out at thecareersacademy.online. The links are in my show notes.